I hear it a lot. We have to support the wave of mass Muslim migration to the West because of what happened to the Jews 75 years ago. The Muslims are the new Jews. You wouldn't send the Jews back to Hitler's Germany, would you? Europe killed 6 million Jews, so they must make up for it by taking 20 million Muslims. North America didn't allow Jewish refugees, so they should atone by allowing Muslims today. Here's why that analogy is wrong. First of all, 75 years ago, Jews were fleeing the Holocaust. There was a dictator named Adolf Hitler who had a final solution to kill every Jew in the world. He built massive concentration camps, killing 6 million Jews, 2/3 of Europe's Jews. And today, well, there is no Holocaust against Muslims. There is no anti-Muslim Hitler preaching genocide against Muslims, raising an army and taking steps to do so. There just isn't. Actually, that whole wipe out other people thing, it's pretty much the Muslims who are doing it. The Muslims aren't the Anne Frank character in this story. In the Middle East, it's Muslims slaughtering Christian Arabs. The would-be Adolf Hitler is this guy, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the dictator of a Nazi proto-country called the Islamic State. They're slaughtering a small religious group called Yazidis. They even blow up historical architecture that they don't like. Now, to be sure, they do kill some other Muslims too, but that's not a genocide against Muslims. It's a civil war in Syria and Iraq. That's the difference. In the Nazi Holocaust, the Jews had nowhere to flee. There wasn't a single Jewish country in the world, and the West was reluctant to take Jews en masse. The ancient kingdom of Israel was under British control. The modern state of Israel had not yet been born. The Jews had no safe place. Compare that to Muslims today. There are 22 countries in the Arab League. And remember, not all Muslims are Arab. There are Turkish Muslims and Iranian Muslims and Indonesian Muslims and Nigerian Muslims. So there are actually 57 countries in the Saudi-led Organization for Islamic Cooperation. More than a quarter of the countries in the world are Muslim. But, and here's the strange thing, why do so few of those Muslim countries take their fellow Muslims? Saudi Arabia, 0. Qatar, 0. Kuwait, 0. All of those ultra-rich Persian Gulf OPEC oil dictatorships, they're taking 0 Muslims. It's not like they lack the real estate. Look at these gleaming cities, Dubai, Doha. Or maybe that's the thing. Maybe they don't want their gleaming cities wrecked by people they don't know or trust or can't vet or simply can't handle economically. Let the suckers in the West take them. But what's the excuse here? Take a look at these. 100,000 air-conditioned tents in Saudi Arabia with a capacity for literally 3 million people. They're sitting empty. They're only used a few days a year for Muslim pilgrims to Mecca. Imagine that, room for 3 million souls, air-conditioned. Fellow Muslims, speaking Arabic, culturally a fit, right in their neighborhood. Why wouldn't Saudi Arabia, home of Mecca, the Muslim theocracy, why wouldn't they take their brethren? Why not a single refugee? Maybe it has something to do with the fact that, well, millions of young, healthy, strapping, military-age single men, those aren't refugees, and the Saudis know it. According to the UN, 3/4 of these migrants are young Muslim men. Refugees are more of a woman and children first kind of thing. Who flees, leaving behind their wife and kids or sisters? These people are not fleeing to Europe, they're invading. Here's a story from January that some refugees to Canada want to go back to the Middle East already because their accommodations in Canada are not as luxurious as they'd hoped. Really? So you'd give Canada a thumbs down on TripAdvisor, give it a bad review on Yelp. You're gonna go back home to Syria or Iraq. Well, yeah, because they're not true refugees. They were not fleeing real imminent danger based on their religion or other characteristics as per the UN definition of a real refugee. Could you imagine a Jew fleeing the Holocaust in 1940, coming to Canada, but then complaining that his hotel accommodations weren't quite good enough, so he was thinking of going back to Berlin? Yeah, no, these aren't real refugees in Canada today. The Jewish analogy, it's not accurate. Here's the real analogy. If it were 1940 and someone said, there's this terrible tragedy going on in Germany, a war, so we must take refugees, you wouldn't say, sure, bring over 50,000 Germans a year, because some of the Germans would be wolves and some would be lambs. Some would be Jews, but some would be Nazis. You would want to choose. You would want to check carefully so your charity wasn't misplaced and so you didn't wind up importing violent underminers. That's the problem. We're not choosing. We're not selecting. Europe doesn't even have borders these days. It doesn't even ask for papers. It's a free-for-all. It's a stampede. But even here in Canada, we are not discerning between the people who really are being exterminated for their religion, Christian Arabs and Yazidis, and some Muslim liberals and Muslim Democrats, versus those Muslims who believe in exterminating them. We're not discerning between those who are victims of the jihad and those who are perpetrating it. We don't even ask. Worse than that, we turn a blind eye to obvious signs. If someone is dressed like a medieval Muslim extremist, there's a good chance they believe in medieval Muslim extremism. We don't even try to sort the wolves from the lambs. It would be too politically incorrect. Don't let anyone tell you that the world's treatment of Muslims today is like the world's treatment of Jews 75 years ago. That doesn't just overstate what's happening to Muslims today, it grossly understates what happened to Jews back then. It's not just foolishness today, it's a form of Holocaust revisionism too. For the Rebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant. Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.